Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Never gonna lose, never gonna win. Long as you're happy, you're always gonna grin. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. You get out what you put in. Oh, good afternoon. We've got Daniel in the house. Daniel, how are you?
I'm good. I was loving that singing, by the way. That was definitely your voice.
It is definitely me. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. That means a lot. Yeah, so now you know that I do actually play the guitar, and I see you've got a guitar in the background as well. So how cool! Two cool people in the room today.
Yeah, but you're definitely much better at guitar than I am.
Oh, you're too humble. You're too humble. For those people that don't know you, Daniel Teacher, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, please.
Yeah, so my name's Daniel Teacher. I'm a managing director of a company called T-Tech. We are a accountancy specialist service provider, helping accountants with technology and consultancy and how to go on their technology journey. I myself was trained at Deloitte as a management consultant, and we started the company in 2010 just to help people do better, as everyone was very dissatisfied with lots of the providers that are out there. And even today, that is still no truer than as it is. When we meet lots of new clients, they still have many, many challenges. So yeah, that's who I am. I worked at a high level in quite a lot of different accountancy firms. So I have a very deep knowledge of how accountants work. So yeah, that's good.
This is a passion of mine, Daniel. I first got involved with accountants and bookkeepers back in 2007 when I worked for Digita, doing tax and account software. And it was at that sort of time that we launched our practice management solution as well. And I totally agree with you. There's some really cool accountants out there that are doing some amazing things, but they're not all using the technology to their advantage. And I don't know if you saw my show last week with the lovely Ariona, but she shared her story of how in 2017 she went to QuickBooks Live or QuickBooks Connect, and that was the first time she ever saw all this tech because they were still using spreadsheets. But there are still people using spreadsheets today. You're smiling. You're smiling.
Why did the accountant cross the road, Ashley?
Why did the accountant cross the road? I don't know this one.
Because that's what they did last year.
But you're quite right. Because the thing is, we're running a busy accountancy practice. We're running a busy bookkeeping practice. And we're so busy, we haven't got time to get off that hamster wheel to see what else is out there. And then we'll see someone else doing something over there and go, that's a good idea. I'm going to sit on that fence for a while. And then it's sort of like, they're doing that. I better sit on a different fence. And what happens if we never get anywhere? And it's only when you're really bold, like Ariona was, and said, right, this is what we're going to do. What advice have you got for people sitting on the fence, please, Daniel?
It's about taking the time to get off the hamster wheel. I say to many, in fact, all of my clients, I'm like, if you're going to do a project or a change and you're going to put people on the project, you can't leave them with 100% utilization target and then ask them to contribute to the project in their evenings and weekends. Yeah. You have to carve out time for them to say, look, I appreciate you're going to be on ABC project. And as a result of that, we're going to take the following jobs away from you, or we're going to give you a bit of extra time, or, we'll do it in a gap when you don't have exams and you're not having to do studying. Because you remember, all of the juniors in their first 5 years, if they're not at work, they're studying, So yeah, I think
that's a lot. That's a lot, to take on, isn't it? If you've got 5 years of exams and you're always studying, and then your boss turns around and says, we're going to put this brand new bit of software in and you're going to change the way you're working. It's no wonder they sit on the fence, is it?
Yeah, but it's also a personality type. Accountants can be risk averse and they don't always like change. Some people do, some people don't. But the general position, is inertia. Yeah. So that, and so that's what you're pushing up against. I've done many projects. I'm not even joking. It might even be over 1,000 at this point after 14 years. Yeah. Many hundreds if it's not. And In effect, the number of times I've sat in a training meeting or a project kickoff and someone has come up with an objection, which is an objection for the sake of it and not a genuine one. Oh, my clients won't want to do that. And then I say, well, have you actually asked your client? Or they'll say, oh, but I've done it like that for years. Why do we need to do it differently? Nothing's broken. Or they'll say, oh, no, that's not going to work for me. That's not how I do it. And it's like, well, if you want to make progress, sometimes it's not even accountants, lots of SMEs or firms can be guilty of this, is people buy a new system and then they take the old process and they're like, oh, well, we've done it like this, so let's use the old process in the new system. That's surely going to work, isn't it? And so you get a lot of that going on as well. Or you get a lot of these cottage industries. I remember one funny story where I took quite a large firm live in a document management system, and one of the partners came up to me and goes, I just can't find these tax documents, Daniel. Jim downstairs, he said he's put them there. So kind of went marching off downstairs to Jim. And I'm like, Jim, Fred can't find the documents. He goes, oh yeah, they're here. And I'm like, that's a folder in your own Outlook, not the document management system. He goes, oh yeah. No, I know. I've got all of my client folders here. I don't use the document management system. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't use it? He was like, oh yeah, it's not for me. I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, the managing partner is looking for data that is there. And so I go back upstairs to Fred. I'm like, you might want to have a word with him because he's decided to opt out, and so, that tends to undermine also a lot of the things that are going on because people decide, oh, well, that's not what I want to do, So,
it's a hard task. And I found this when I was implementing the digital software in the early days while I was there. I actually helped implement it because we didn't have an implementation team at the time.
Oh, wow.
And, I went to one practice and I went to the reception and I said, hi, I'm Ashley. I'm here for the day. We're going to do this. And she looked at me as if I was, I don't know, trying to sell her, windows or whatever. And she said, I know nothing about this. I said, but it's all booked in for today. And some of the staff didn't know that I was going to be there today to teach them how to use this new software. And the amount of problems we had with that practice because they hadn't bought into it.
It's funny you say that. Last night I was at an awards dinner, and we actually had 2 awards dinners last night. One we won and one we didn't win, but there we go.
You weren't at both of them, were you? What's she called? The Vicar of Dibley?
No, I was at the one we lost, but it was fine.
Oh, how annoying!
That's like no. So we were talking about it at the table last night, and we were, one of the people at the table said to me, "Oh, Daniel, do you sell change management stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, we get involved in change management." But I said, doing change management properly takes a lot of time and resource. And actually having someone internally with real time is better than an external person. And often, external people can, for the level of support that's needed on change management, actually can get quite expensive. And so we're having a whole debate about, people putting enough time into it. And then we kind of got onto and it was really funny when the other partner said this. She's like, we literally had this whole conversation about how change management is important and to dedicate time and to use external advice and all of this kind of stuff. And then she went, oh yeah, we've just signed a contract with X, but we're just going to do it all ourselves. And everyone just laughed, but in a nervous way for her. And she was like, oh yeah, we'll just blag our way through it. Yeah. And this was not a small firm, by the way. And so, yeah, it's, I think people also probably underestimate the size of the task in front of them. Logic would dictate, oh, well, look, we've got something new. It's better than what you have today. It is probably different. There are many good reasons why we're doing this. We're the leadership of the firm. You trust that, the decisions we're going to make are being made in order to benefit you. And then what people discover is people are very insular and they're worried. They're not worried about the leadership of the firm. They're worried about the job, their clients and the job that they have to do and how they do it. And so, yeah, a lot of people get a bit of a surprise when they're like, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Or yeah, they don't receive the change with open arms. And yeah, so a lot of that is down to communication. So,
your company, T-Tech, all right. Do you actually make a product or you just hold people's hands and help them? How does it work?
No, we we are quite rare in the space that we give advice to people and then we do a lot of the implementation as well.
Okay.
So we're effectively like an IT company who do the day-to-day IT for a client. We help them do a lot of IT projects, and we help them with a lot of Microsoft things. Lots of people are moving to SharePoint and Copilot and Teams and all this stuff. We do a lot of that implementation. And then we also do a lot of automation work for our clients as well. And we have our own client portal called Practice Gateway.
Right. Okay. So I was talking about me doing the implementation for Digita. You would implement that and then make sure that works with everything else that they've got, and maybe put in a document and all of that.
That is basically why we have a business.
Yes.
So, because accountants have a totally unique software stack, particularly in the mid-market where you're running, the older, bigger software, and it's fiddly and it's tricky. And so our entire business has been successful on the back of that. Software is a challenge. How can we make everything play nicely together? And so, we very regularly get called in to say, everything's not playing nicely together, please help. And then effectively our entire business has been accountant after accountant after accountant. We take our template and we're like, look, we've sold this in 50 other places before. You're now 51. That's a good thing for you because I know the pitfalls and I know how it works. I know how it hangs together and I know how to get it right. So.
Sure. Okay. So I'm this medium-sized practice. All right. We're using this for our tax, that for our accounts, and that for our practice management. And we've seen this shiny new thing that's going to do our tax now. You'll come in and you'll help fix it all. But might you turn around and go, in our experience, that tax doesn't work with those two other products. Why don't you look at this? Is that the sort of thing you do as well?
Yeah, a lot of our engagements with clients start with a plan. Yeah, so we go to a client and we say, "What's your plan?" And they're like, "Don't have one." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine."
Perfect.
Yeah, and then we say, "Well, what's your business plan?" And sometimes they say, "Oh, we're not sure," and sometimes they say, "Here you go." And ultimately, our clients describe their relationships with us as a journey. So they come to us to do the basic IT stuff, and then that matures onto more Microsoft stuff, and then that matures onto automation. We call it like a maturity model. So we have like a maturity methodology where we're like, look, you start just getting the good foundations in. Because again, many clients that we meet, they can't log in the morning. They're having cybersecurity issues. Things are slow, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Honestly, in 2024, all of those problems still exist. And then they come on a journey with us. And that's how it's funny. That was not a word created by us. Actually, we said, "Oh, here's the plan." And our clients then got stuck. Oh, they all started saying to us, "Oh, yeah, it's the TTech journey." And we're like, "Oh, yeah, cool." So, yeah, that's kind of how it's evolved over time.
Yeah, you just mentioned quite a while ago now, Microsoft, and then Copilot and the AI. Is that going to get rid of all the jobs?
It's definitely not going to get rid of all the jobs. The trick is in the name. Yeah. So it's not called autopilot. It's called Copilot.
I love that. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
So it's there to be your co. Yeah. So it's not autopiloting your job, it's co-piloting your job. So, it's all about, I can't screen share now, but there's a really useful graph that we have that basically says, like, I'll give you a brilliant example. I'm presenting in Prague in a few weeks' time, and I was asked to give, like, what's the presentation title, how's it all going to hang together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And normally I would have sat with my EA, we would have had a chat for half an hour. She would have gone on, written off a version of the document. That would have taken her an hour. I would have spent half an hour reviewing it. And then we would have got together and kind of finessed it. This time I was like, "Sarah, go to Copilot and get it to write the brief." And she spent 10 minutes writing the brief. It wrote an awesome version of it. And I spent 10 minutes this morning reading it. So we had a task that used to take us probably 2.5 hours this morning that we both did in 20 minutes. And so so it's all about taking the writing time away, and you become a reviewer and not a writer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, you read it and you Danielized it, if that's a word, so that it still sounds like the Daniel.
It's really interesting you say that. Copilot has a new button that it says "sound like me."
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So it will write you something, and then there's a button at the bottom. Like if you don't like the tone, you can change it to be like sound like me, and it will change the tone. And because it's watching your emails and your chats, and it's watching your tone, and so much so, like like you might sign off an email, A with a smiley face or like A with an X. Some people do that. It even picks up like your classic signature.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
yeah, it's good, definitely getting there.
So Copilot, there's also ChatGPT. ChatGPT is owned by Microsoft. Can you explain how all that works and which one I need in my business?
Yeah, no, look, there are, I mean, it goes even wider than that. So, there are lots of really interesting AI tools out there. So Google has Bed, and Amazon's working on one. And I don't know if you saw last week, but Apple just announced collaboration with OpenAI. And then there's Gemini, like there's loads of them. Yeah. And there's probably 5 or 6 leaders, which are the main tech companies. And so they're all doing a good job, but they're coming it from very different approaches. And so as a company, we focus on Microsoft because all of the software that accountants use runs on Microsoft. So that's pretty important. SQL servers are the bedrock. Actually, I've never said this before, but it's definitely true. SQL servers are the bedrock of accountancy data. And so, if all that data lives there, and again, everyone is using Teams and everyone is using Microsoft, it makes sense to carry on that journey with Microsoft. That's not to downplay what all those other guys are doing. It's really good. But what you have to remember is these are ecosystems. Okay. And so the power of any of the AI engines, I mean, look, anyone can go to copilot.microsoft.com or chatgpt.com or the Google version and start consuming. But those AI systems don't have any visibility of your company data. And nor do you want them to, by the way. Yeah. Because I don't know if you know this, but anything you type into OpenAI gets added to their large language model. So there's a funny story a couple of months ago where some marketeers from a few big corporates put all their customer lists, their client lists into, like, say, do this or write me an email for these people. And they didn't realize that OpenAI then indexes that data. And then some of their competitors stumbled across this data and they posted it. And they're like, hey, everyone, if you just type in OpenAI, show me all of ABC's customers, it just goes and gives you the answer. So you have to be careful what you type into them, and having a policy is definitely important. And so to go back to kind of the beginning of it, Microsoft's strategy is basically security first, your data first, and then integrated into your world. So what does that mean? That means that anything you type into Copilot will never be trained for their models. So it's all like, I can't think quite what the word is, but it disappears as soon as you type it in. It doesn't, it's all temporary. Yeah. So that's a very, very important point. Number 2 is Copilot is looking at your Microsoft data. So when I talk about Microsoft data, I mean things in Microsoft 365, like your Teams and your emails and your SharePoint. So if you imagine, a lot of firms aren't storing all those data in those places, and that's another conversation for another day, but assuming that you're storing all your data in those places, Copilot can now see that. And Copilot, because it's a security first model, it respects all the security boundaries that you already have in place. So when you have your Copilot from Microsoft, if you have a chat message, you can query that as an individual, but someone else in your company can't read your emails or can't see your chat messages, but you can. And so their whole play is, we are going to deliver this through Microsoft Office, and it's going to respect all of your security and compliance boundaries, which is actually really, really important. Because again, we were having discussion, I think it was yesterday as well. And one of the guys said that he went to an FCA presentation, and I didn't love the FCA for saying this, but hey ho, they said, if you're going to use generative AI for your audits, you have to know exactly what it's doing. And that's quite an unfair comment at this point. And so I don't think that should dissuade people from doing it. What I said to them is, you should test 20 or 30 concepts that you're going to use in it and be happy with them, and then that becomes your company standard, and then you can sit there with confidence. But It's an interesting world, and everyone is learning right now.
Absolutely. So I'm running this practice. I've now put in Copilot, but I don't know how to use it. What are the tips that we should be doing? Why should we get Copilot? Because there's other practices out there saying, oh, we don't want any AI at all, and they're worried about the security that you just obviously cleared up.
It is not a finished end game product, and it probably never will be.
No.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people are, you have to remember now, Copilot is coming up. It's not a million miles off 12 months old at this point. I mean, a lot of people couldn't buy it till January, but Microsoft's been working hard on it for at least a year at this point. So it's not like, a month old. So a lot of people are just picking it up and trying it and not necessarily having success, because it's like driving a Formula One car when you've never driven a Formula One car. Like, we've just given you like immense horsepower and the best brakes and the best everything. So I think a lot of people just think, oh, well, I can just go there and type a one-liner and then it's going to give me the answer that I need. And there's this whole world, I don't know if you're familiar with prompting, that it's going to become, we all need to become prompt engineers. And that's very, very true. But even though it's not a finished product, there are tons of examples where people are getting value. So I just gave you one earlier where I had to prepare for that presentation. I record almost all of my meetings now. It takes the notes for me. Not only does it take the notes, but because that's recorded and it's in my Copilot, it can recall anything I've said in any meeting, in any email, in any chat, and bring it back to me. It can recall what the client said. I had one client who said to me, they recorded a tender pitch that they did, and they asked Copilot at the end, based on the sentiment in the meeting, do you think we're going to win the pitch? And it gave a really cool answer. And I haven't found out yet if they won it, but like, it's insightful like that. Or like, it's great for drafting, marketing love it. People that write emails love it. Like, it's great for that. I had a client who said to me, oh yeah, we're using Tollies for our information, and they wanted to use a different research tool. And I said, well, just put it into Copilot. And he was asking about like valuations on FRS 105. And he was like, whoa, that's the answer I was looking for. And I was like, well, there you go, you've got it.
Yeah.
And so, it's a great research tool. It's a great note-taking tool. It's a great search tool. It's a great tool for drafting. It's a great for ideas as well. Like, we do a lot of training internally. I mean, everybody does. I've had it. We had to do, because we focus a lot on accountancy, we do a lot of training with our guys around accountancy. So I got it to write me a training brief for my team, and then write the quiz, a multiple choice quiz at the end for all of them then to do. I mean, like, that would have taken me hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would have been a crap quiz as well, because I would have rushed it. And so, like, what I said at Microsoft on Tuesday is, everyone should try and do one thing a day with Copilot. Just try one thing every day, and you will see it will build and build and build. Because also, we're all on the hamster wheel, like you said at the beginning. Like, it's not natural for us to think, oh, I've got this Copilot now, I need to start using it. You turn up, you've got, as I'm on the phone here, my emails are pinging away in the background. Yeah, so those are all pinging away. So it's not natural, and we're like, oh, we need to deal with the way that we've done it for the last 20 years. And so that's why this do one thing a day, I think, is a really nice way for you to stop and pause and be like, oh yeah. And I'm yet to have a bad experience with that. Yeah. So it really is about putting in the time. And then the other big thing is training. Like, people buy it and they do no training, and then they wonder why they don't really understand it. And you wouldn't drive a new F1 car without an enormous amount of training. Now, I'm not saying this needs an enormous amount of training, but it definitely needs a decent amount.
Yeah, you need to learn to drive, don't you? I used to work in the sticks many years ago when I first started my careers in sales. So it was 32 years ago, and I was talking to an old boy who worked for the electric company, and he told me a story that they went around and they were putting in electric, when it first became wider known, and they were confused about this old lady that lived on her own, that she wasn't using any electric, and they went to read the meter, and it really hadn't moved. And they were really perplexed, and they went to see her. And they said, you've got electric. Oh yeah, it's marvelous, but you're not using it. Yeah, I use it all the time. I use it all the time. Right. So well, but we can't work out why you're not using any on the meter. So I wonder if you can explain to us how you're actually using it. And so she said, well, my paraffin for my lamps is kept out in the back room in the parlor, and it's dark in there. So what I do is I go in and turn the light on, fill up my paraffin lights, and then I turn it off, and it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I don't know how I would have managed before. Like, and this is the same thing with buying some of this software, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
I've got this bit of software. Let's just imagine an all singing, all dancing practice management CRM system, and all you use it for is sending an email. You're not using it for time management. You're not using it for reporting. You're not using it for cash flow forecasting or anything else. You're just using it. And that's the problem, isn't it? When we get some of these software packages, and Copilot can be absolutely huge. How do you get people to, it's all very well doing one thing a day. How do you get people to sort of like, wow, I didn't know it could do that?
It all starts from the top, is what I find. Yeah. So this was 3 or 4 years ago. A client asked me, "Oh, we want to buy ABC software from you. When does it not work?" And I said, "It doesn't work when there's not sponsorship from the top, and when the top don't lead it." And so we're doing lots of training at the moment in this space. And one of the plan in our training says, have a senior person and have a more junior person. Because it's got to be led from the top, but also you need to have more junior people who have the time to do some of the doing. And so it really is about leadership, because you don't want to be in a position where you've got people lower down the organization who are doing really good stuff, but the leadership have no visibility. It's not on their plan. It's not a priority, and vice versa. You don't want it to be at the top and not be lower down as well. So, and time, you've just got to invest time in this kind of stuff to really, gain some benefit from it.
Yeah, and that is the key thing, isn't it? You can't, if you're absolutely at capacity, you cannot put anything else in because you're at capacity. No one's going to want to work more. So, like you say, maybe, like, I guess that's why you come in, isn't it? You'll come in and you'll help take some of that capacity and push people along.
Yeah, I say this to customers often, though. I say to them, look, I'm enthusiastic and I'm very experienced and all this, and I'm like, don't make me do it to you. We've got to do it with you.
Yeah? Oh, I love that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want, part of the reason accountants also have a challenge with technology is they've all got a technology project that's got a bad story. Yeah, they've all been there at some point in their careers. And a lot of the time when you hear that, you're like, oh, well, IT told us to do that.
Yeah.
So, we just did it. Well, going back to what you were saying much earlier, you kind of stumbled before you started at that point, because always the business has got to lead and always the business has got to be involved, and even, with the Copilot training we're doing, I wrote on the slides, I literally wrote, this is not an IT project. This is a business initiative and it needs to be run in that way. And so, if you were to give everyone a takeaway, this has got to be a business-led initiative from the top to really say, look, how are we going to take this seriously? And, how are we going to make it work for us? Because it's really interesting. People say, oh, you asked me earlier, am I going to be replaced by AI? And no, you're not going to be replaced by AI, but you are going to be replaced by the firm who knows how to use AI. Yeah. So that's your competition, is the guy next door who's worked out how to make it work for him. And this stuff is huge. And if anyone says it's not relevant for me, they're just wrong. And they really haven't understood it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can't believe how quickly the time's gone. I pretty much say that every single week I get a guest on, but we just get into the nitty gritty. What have you got coming up that you can tell us about, Daniel, and how can people work with you?
Yeah, so the main thing a lot of people are talking about is now we've launched something called an AI Academy, which is an 8-week training program on Copilot to really give people proper training on how all this stuff works. A lot of people also come to us just to help them get ready for Copilot, because there's 2 other very important things that you need to be aware of, which is, one, if your data is in Microsoft or SharePoint, you're going to really limit by 50% how much you can use Copilot. And then the other thing we very regularly see is people haven't looked at the security. So remember, Copilot is going to look everywhere around your Microsoft tenant, and if you haven't got good security, then you might have the wrong employee seeing the wrong information. So that's another big thing that lots of people are talking to us about. So, training, leadership, getting stuff in SharePoint and Teams and all of that, and the security, 3 really important things.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. Daniel, you've been absolutely brilliant today. I just got one more question to ask you. Not related to anything that we talked about, but when you were at school, when you were in a primary school, running around in your shorts in the playground playing football or whatever, what did you want to do when you left school?
At primary school age?
Yes, absolutely.
God, that's a difficult question. I definitely had an interest in technology at that point. I couldn't say I would have done what I was going to do now. Interestingly, by secondary school, I definitely decided that. I think I wanted to be a fighter pilot, actually.
Nice.
I used to play, I don't know if do you remember that game on the PlayStation in like 1998? There was like a Top Gun PlayStation game.
Right. Okay. No, because I'm considerably older than you, so
okay, it doesn't matter. It was a great game.
I had Pong and Atari when I was growing up.
Yeah, when I was a bit younger, but yeah. So we used to play it. The reason I remember is because me and my brother used to have a debate. There was the France '98 World Cup game, or there was the Top Gun game. That's why I remember the year so vividly. I'd love to be a fighter pilot. I thought about that a lot. So good question. Thank you.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you so much for being with me. People can get hold of you where?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. We follow me. We post loads of stuff on that. That's a very good place to start.
Awesome. Daniel, thank you very much indeed. Thank you to everybody for watching. We will be back next week. Cheerio now.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You get out what you put in. Never gonna